Hey y'all, welcome back. We are back with another history lesson, but in a different way. This is from a channel called Dr. Mike, and the title is What Killed Every Dictator? Let's find out. Like every dictator ever? We're going to go through every dictator ever?
While humankind has endured the wrath of countless dictators, warlords, and tyrants, we can take solace in the fact that all of them are dead. Well, at least the ones in this video. Often, history's most despicable people died in extraordinary fashion. Deadly brawls on white sandy beaches, highly orchestrated political revenge killings, and even a bloodthirsty woman? I guess evil comes in all shapes, sizes, and genders. Also, we gotta give a huge thank you to Oxford medical historian Lindsay Fitzharris for helping us research this video. Check out our channel, link down below. Let's start with the most famous and perhaps most controversial entry on this list. Adolf Hitler, who died by his own hands within his secret bunker in Berlin. Probably. As the Soviets were closing in on the Nazis, Hitler and his...
Probably. What's controversial? He was awful. He was awful. He was terrible. There's no controversy around it. Okay, I like this already. This man seems to be a certified doctor. He's got the scrubs. I love his setup, his filming setup. I love that we're getting this from an actual medical professional. Like, it's not a historian's point of view. This is going to be from a medical point of view. Are we into this?
Bunker in Berlin. Probably. As the Soviets were closing in on the Nazis, Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun, used a gun and cyanide capsules to seal the deal before they could be captured. Per Hitler's wishes from a hastily written will, he and Braun were to be burned. However, the bodies were only partly destroyed by the petrol used and were later quickly buried in a shallow bomb crater as the Soviets approached. The Russians exhumed Hitler's remains and threw them in a river to prevent the burial site from becoming a shrine for fascists. However, the Red Army kept a portion of the jaw and a fragment of skull with a bullet hole and took them to Moscow. And they still have them. In 2017, the Russian government permitted a group of French pathologists to study the dental remains to confirm, in fact, they did belong to Hitler. Benito Mussolini was the strongman prime minister of Italy for 20 years.
Okay, I have a very valid question. It might be the stupidest question. I don't know. But Hitler's belief was that, to my understanding, that people with blonde hair and blue eyes were superior. They were better. They were the only, that's what they wanted. Okay, but Hitler had neither? And it didn't look like his wife did either. Can someone explain that to me? Honestly, genuinely, like, why? Thank you in advance. All right, Mussolini.
Running a fascist government that silenced opponents with violence and assisted Hitler in trying to take over all of Europe. He sucked. As the Allied forces closed in and brought an end to the Axis powers, Mussolini attempted to flee Italy and escape to Spain. He didn't get far, getting captured while in disguise at Lake Como and ultimately sentenced to death by machine guns just one day later.
Yo.
His corpse, as well as those of his mistress and allies, were brought to Milan and tossed in the city square where they were kicked, beaten, and spat on by the Italian people.
Y'all knew this? Y'all knew this? Oh, man. First of all, you were captured in Lake Como in disguise. You were gunned down to your death. And then, in your death, stomped. Seems like Hitler got a better deal than him, and he was just a sidekick. Wow.
City square where they were kicked, beaten, and spat on by the Italian people. James Cook was a British explorer and owns the distinct honor of having the single most exciting death in this entire video. Cook mapped a lot of the Pacific, exploring places like Tahiti, New Zealand, and Hawaii. By the time of his third great voyage, something in Cook seemed to have snapped. He began mistreating indigenous people, and some argue he was partly responsible for starting a genocidal era of British imperialism. Okay, so how did he die? Well, in 1779, Captain Cook was searching for the Northwest Passage, a naval route between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans that went over North America. He stumbled across the Hawaiian Islands and became a sensation. The native Hawaiians believed he was a deity and named him Lono. They offered him countless tributes and ceremonies in his honor. Eventually, the captain and his men overstayed their welcome. and then they end up setting sail toward Alaska. Unfortunately, they encountered a storm and returned just 4 days later, needing to make some repairs onto their ships.
I just need to shout out the quality and the production of this channel. This is phenomenal. Wow, Dr. Mike.
God crawling back with a broken ship 4 days later, that wasn't part of the legend the Hawaiians had believed about Lono, so tensions rose very quickly, leading to several instances of theft from his ships. Cook had unfortunately developed a zero-tolerance policy towards indigenous people who disobeyed him. So he sailed to shore, climbed onto the beach, and stomped his way to town where, without warning, he kidnapped the king. Cook escorted the king back towards the ship through the steamy Hawaiian jungle, gathering an entourage of confused Hawaiians as they marched. By the time they got back to the beach, a large, angry crowd surrounded Cook, who could not swim. With tensions rising rapidly and a no doubt difficult language barrier.
You pulled up to Hawaii, couldn't swim, and kidnapped somebody? Sir, you surrounded yourself by water and disrespected the natives, and you couldn't swim? Do the math. Make it math for me, because the math is not mathing. Sir.
Who could not swim. With tensions rising rapidly and a no doubt difficult language barrier, chaos broke out and a brawl on the beach ensued. There was punching, kicking, clawing, biting, a real street fight under the hot sun. Cook swung left and right until he took a knife to the shoulder and a club to the back of the head. He fell forward into the shallows of the Pacific Ocean and was finished off by the violent Hawaiian mob. Despite the battle, Cook was still revered by the Hawaiians, and his lifeless body was taken back to the village where it was boiled and stripped of its flesh. A week later, Cook's remains were returned to the British, which were disposed of in the waters of the bay in the customary naval fashion. Aloha.
They boiled him and skinned him? Is that why it's the most exciting one? To call the Hawaiian people a mob and to say it was a brawl feels like, was it a brawl? Did they jump him? And then also, like, were they a mob or were these people just upset because he disrespected their king? I don't know. Doesn't matter. They boiled him, skinned him, and handed over the rest of him. Out of honor? Pretty exciting. Riveting.
Disposed of in the waters of the bay in the customary naval fashion. Aloha. Christopher Columbus was an Italian explorer who is credited with discovering America, though the more technically accurate impact was establishing a permanent connection between Europe and the Western Hemisphere. You can't exactly discover a place that already has people on it. His voyages to the New World were quite grim, enslaving, torturing, and bringing disease to hundreds of thousands of Caribbean natives in an attempt to deliver gold and glory to the Spanish crown that sponsored him. It's generally believed that he died in Spain in his mid-50s from some sort of heart failure, probably contributed to by a battle with gout. That being said, a number of experts revisited this claim hundreds of years after his death and proposed a new theory: Reiter's syndrome, otherwise known as reactive arthritis, an autoimmune condition. He had some unique symptoms that matched the condition, including bouts of red bleeding eyes, intermittent blindness, and immobility from pain in his spine. These symptoms only worsened dramatically in his final years of life, when he and his men had to survive as castaways off the coast of Jamaica for 1 full year while trying to find the mythical lost city of gold. Treasure would have been great, but what he really should have been looking for was probably a leave.
That's so funny. I just made my husband go to Walgreens at like 11 o'clock last night because I was out of a leave. And it is the only thing that really makes my, like, I don't know what we're dealing with here, you guys. Just pray for me. But it's the only thing that really, like, makes me feel better and doesn't make me feel like I'm taking, like, a drug. I don't know. It's weird. Judge your mom. Are we considering these people dictators? I've never heard, like, Julius Caesar or Christopher Columbus to be categorized as a dictator. Hey Siri, what's the dictionary definition of dictator? A ruler with total power over a country, typically one who has obtained control by force. I guess so. A chief magistrate with absolute power appointed in an emergency. All right, I mean, I guess that qualifies.
Julius Caesar was the leader of Rome and one of the most dominant figures in all of human history. In fact, he is so synonymous with leadership that his name means leader in other languages, like Kaiser in Germany or Tsar in Russian. His military campaigns resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands in his quest to expand the Roman Empire. His success and lust for power fed off one another, and soon members of the Roman Senate grew concerned that he would turn the Roman Republic into a monarchy, anointing himself as king. Tensions were rising, and Caesar's friends warned him of dissent within the Senate. He ignored these concerns and went anyway. Once there, one of the conspirators approached Caesar on the pretext of pleading for his exiled brother. He grabbed Caesar's toga, apparently signaling to the room that the assassination had begun. The senators rushed in with blades, stabbing Caesar over and over, with each man fighting for the claim that he was the one who killed the emperor. Caesar was reportedly stabbed 35 times. No amount of IV fluids, blood transfusions, or pressors would help him there. As he died, he uttered some of his most famous last words. Et tu, Brute? You too, Brutus, to his longtime friend and perhaps illegitimate son who stood over him with a bloodied knife. Or maybe he said that. He certainly says it in William Shakespeare's tragedy, Julius Caesar, which was written 1,500 years later, but there's no proof he literally said that as he died in a pool of blood on the Senate floor. Still, it does make for a great story.
It does.
Caligula.
Whoa. Okay. I'm thoroughly enjoying this, but I need to know if you guys are thoroughly enjoying this. We're going to watch Caligula's story, then I'm going to stop. You guys let me know if you want me to continue, and I'll come back with part 2. I also still owe you part 2 of Germany post Hitler. I haven't forgotten. But it could be just a lot of history class happening in the next couple of days. So let me know. I just love, again, getting this point of view. And it's not even super medical. I just love that it's from like someone who's not presenting as a history buff, but like a doctor. I think that's really cool. All right, let's keep going.
Was a relative of Caesar and a Roman ruler who was infamously called the Mad Emperor, and for good reason. After taking power, he fell quite ill, and many experts speculated that he may have suffered from epilepsy, a brain disorder that causes recurrent seizures. He actually believed he was a god and killed randomly, beating a priest to death with a hammer during an animal sacrifice ritual just because. He nearly bankrupted Rome, spending endless cash on extravagant feasts and parties for himself, refilling the coffers by seizing property and assets from rich Romans. Eventually, when Caligula was just 28 years old, he was surrounded by a group of conspirators. One raised his sword and slashed the emperor between the collarbone and neck. Carotids, jugulars, lots of blood vessels, even more blood. Caligula tried to run away, but another enemy was lying in wait and knocked him to the ground with another sword strike. The plotters stabbed him 30 times, continuing to attack him well after he passed. Roman historian Cassius Dio claims they even tasted of his flesh. The public demanded justice for Caligula, and his assassins were sentenced to death as well.
Listen, maybe we finish after Genghis Khan. I'm not saying none of these men deserved what was coming to them. I don't believe in playing God, but listen, I'm just saying it's gruesome hearing this back and watching it in animation. Imagine it in real life. Like, that is just gory, gruesome, awful. All right, we're going to watch Genghis Khan and then we'll stop. Have I become a history geek? Have I?
Khan died somehow. After violently uniting the tribes of Asia and the Middle East in the 11 and 1200s, the brutal Mongolian warlord died after either falling off his horse or being castrated in a violent sexual attack or an arrow wound from battle or an infection, potentially even the bubonic plague.
Two?
It's believed those closest to him tried to keep his legendary status after death by intentionally sharing conflicting reports of how he died. As time had gone on, though, more and more experts believed the plague may have been to blame. Spread by bacteria-carrying fleas that infested rodents, or by the coughs and sneezes of sufferers, the bubonic plague causes lymph nodes to swell, ooze pus, as well as high fevers and headaches. Oddly enough, the bubonic plague still exists, though it's not common and these days can easily be treated with antibiotics.
I don't want to know who that is. Oh, I see who it is. This list is better and better. I'm unwell. Okay, we're coming back to this one, whether y'all like it or not, because I want to learn. And I'm like so engaged. This is really good content. Like, Dr. Mike, you're phenomenal. All right. Let me know your thoughts on this. Feel free to drop in any other facts that you know, or correct anything that you feel is wrong, or give me deeper, further insight. And I'm really excited. I'm a geek. I'm a history geek. Never thought I'd say that about myself. Go and have the day you deserve. Love you, mean it. Bye.